Today's horror story was posted on r/Truescarystories by user u/MarxyCheese. It's called Beautiful Lady. Back around when I was 5 or 6, I remembered this really beautiful lady in our neighborhood. She lived right next door to us and she'd always come by to visit. I always thought she was a great and nice person, so I never understood why my grandmother hated her with a passion. Or why my mom and dad would argue in hushed whispers after she left. Or why I'd sometimes hear the gossips between the older people when they came over. It was a relatively small and rural neighborhood, everyone knew each other and we were a close-knit community. One day, my grandmother and a bunch of her old lady friends were chatting in the sala, Filipino word for porch. They were all sat down, playing cards and talking. That's when Ms. Acacia, I think that was her name, it started with an A, came by, and asked me if my dad was there and if she could go inside. My dad was the only technician in the neighborhood, so I thought she just needed his help with something in her house. She avoided my grandmother and her friends' piercing glares as she entered our home. When she left with my dad to her house, my grandmother and her friends' whispers started. I felt so curious back then that I went up to my grandmother and asked, "Lola, what's so bad about Ms. Acacia?" And she sat me on her lap and said, "Ms. Acacia is a bad woman. She's an old witch in disguise of a beautiful woman. And she's trying to lure the men in our neighborhood to be her spirit helpers by living in our midst. Your Uncle Ingan disappeared because of her and now she's after your dad. So you must never let her get too close. Understood, Maria?" I nodded my head, though I didn't quite understand at that time. She didn't look like a witch to me. To me, Ms. Acacia was just a very kind and very beautiful lady. My grandmother was a little bit of a mancukulam herself, mountain witch. Every morning at breakfast, she'd touch my dad's forehead and whisper strange words I couldn't hear. I didn't think much of it at that time, but now that I do, was it some kind of protection spell? I'll never know. My grandmother has already passed away, so I couldn't exactly ask her. One day, I was playing hide and seek with the other neighborhood kids and hid behind the big tree in Ms. Acacia's yard. I saw her through the window. She was still very pretty, but there were deep wrinkles and bags I'd never noticed on her before. She saw me through the window and waved at me with a smile. I waved back and she then shut the blinds of the window tight. When I told my grandma, Mama, and Papa about this during dinner that night, they all looked worriedly at each other. I never saw Ms. Acacia again after that, as the house next to us was vacated. There weren't even any moving vans. We moved to a bigger city when I reached 7th grade. These events totally slipped my mind until a few days ago. A few days ago, I visited the old neighborhood we lived in, and went to the birthday party of my friends Hannah and Jana. They were twins. I had kept in touch with them and they lived right across our old house. At the party, I saw a beautiful lady that looked remarkably like Ms. Acacia. Apparently her name was Felicity and she was Ms. Acacia's granddaughter. I never knew she had a husband or a child for that matter. And she lived exactly where Ms. Acacia lived back in those days. She looked exactly like her, black curly hair, tall nose, tan smooth skin, and red lips with alluring eyes. It was unsettling. I went back home and decided to forget about it. Just today, I received a chat from Jana that Hannah's husband had went missing. No one knew why or where he went. He just went missing. I just can't help but feel it had something to do with what occurred all those many years ago. Thanks for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror stories.